bit of a reuser as well. He uses he wears a costume that came from a cereal called Spy Smasher.
So Brain Guy was only known as Brain Guy. He didn't get any sort of expanded universe name until the Decipher card game in the mid-90s, which called him Brainiac.
Very creative name.
When it came for Hasbro to make an action figure of it, they could not use the name Brainiac because DC has a very popular character already named Brainiac. So they asked us what's his real name, assuming that Brainiac and Brain Guy were nicknames. So I pitched Hans Lindbeck as his name, and if there are any neurologists or brain surgeons in the crowd, Hans Lindbeck is part of the brain. So that's my reasoning and rationale behind that.
I love these shots. Look how happy Phil is. Phil is like the grumpy old man of the effects industry now. If you talk to him, he's awesome. But to the left is what Muftak looks like without hair. That's Lane Liskin did all this fabrication on the little eyes and snout and everything. And that's where, if you look at the mannequin's face poking through, I love that the mannequin has a mustache. Like everything's need a mustache. But that's where you see out of the Muftak costume is right in the neck. There's Ralph McQuarrie's sketch of the character, and that's the newly finished costume in the background of Phil.
And speaking of unusable names, Muftak's production nickname was Spider-Man.
Yeah,
there was no way that name was ever going to be used in
exactly.
any product. So.
In the background of this left shot is the T-head in the works. And to the right, you have Doug Beswick and Lane Liskin modeling the latest in matching shirts and dungarees. You know? And this is Muftak many years later. He came to our studio for restoration for my good friend Paul Burns. And the interior of him was coated in latex and rubber. And he was starting to deteriorate. His neck was damaged. He needed some stitching and a lot of fixing up. And it's fine, that's what we do. But the latex really got to me, and I said, yeah, there's a shirt inside of it, and it was mashed up in one puddle of latex as a solid thing. So I asked Rick about it, and I said, do you know why Muftak is like coated in latex inside? He goes, oh, I know exactly why. I'm like, okay. He said, we had either Entertainment Tonight or one of those through the studio, and they had put Muftak up on top of the spray booth to be like just in the background while they were shooting. And he said everybody left, he's wearing shorts, and he goes over again, and he goes to pull them off. And whoever put him up there put him on a bucket of latex, which is a 5-gallon bucket of liquid latex that the cover apparently wasn't on, and it dumped on him, and he said all over his legs, which led to him having silky smooth legs once he had to peel that off. It's like waxing, like once it captures hair, there's no getting that off. So that was a sore subject. So here's some folks in the shot. That's Maria on the left, Melissa in the middle. Maria's working on repairing the hands. Melissa's stitching up his body. I am shampooing Muftak on the right-hand side. Let that sink in. Because I need to. I have shampooed the original Muftak. We did it twice. We washed him. First, we vacuumed him like you would like a precious teddy bear or something, where you have like netting over the vacuum so it can't catch anything. We vacuumed dust out of him. We did a pass with water. Then we did one type of shampoo for an acrylic fur, and then another after that. And ultimately, here's a before and after. It's not a Photoshop picture. I don't know how well it shows with all the lights on in here. But on the right, there was a little spot that was tucked in that we had missed with all the cleaning. And to see how gray that spot was when we were done, I was like, oh, okay, we did okay. And there's a little before and after. And that's Kathy Burns, Bob's wife, with him. And she's holding the sausage because that's what you do with Muftak. And there's Lane in the background. Lane used to do Laurel and Hardy impersonations all the time, is a thing John Burke likes to talk about. Lane passed away in the 90s, but very, very talented fabricator, and who made a nice contribution to Star Wars.
This is a fun-looking alien. Its production name was Snakehead. And it was essentially a simple hand puppet. There was no body constructed for this particular alien. And its whole point, its whole existence was to annoy another alien, in this case, Hyena Man, or one of the two quote-unquote wolfmen who were in the cantina. And the way it was set up is it had a bladder and a liquid in it, because it was supposed to spit out blood or spit out some sort of viscous liquid. Yeah, it was supposed to have this basically active, wet mouth. And upon the first take, it looked so nasty and unseemly that we decided, no, we're not going to do this.
And if you look at the picture on the left, this is the first take, there is blood dripping out of his mouth. John Berg also likes to tell the story of how the first time they went to hit the bladder, that it just shot out of the thing's mouth rather than drooling, and they thought, that's not going to work. There's George Lucas holding that piece on set. There's my hands holding the real thing many years later, which it wound up with a client of ours, and it's amazingly cool. Phil Tippett fabricated this piece. And there's the devil guy and the Wolfman. The Wolfman there is wearing a Jawa robe, by the way. That's why the sleeves don't come all the way down. The hood of that robe is actually wrapped around Hammerhead. So Hammerhead looks like he's got a hood on. It's actually a Jawa hood that's wrapped around and tied like a little kerchief underneath his neck.
The devil guy has one of the greatest production nicknames as well. Found in the archives, found in these notes, found in his documentation. In addition to being known as Devil Guy, he's also known as Louis.
And so he asked me about that. And I the only thing I could think, he's like, so why do they call him Louis? I said, well, look at him. Looks like a Louis. Like, I don't know, that's all I got. Rick says devil guy, I say devil guy. So this was actually originally made for a movie that Rick was pitching with John Landis. It was called I Was a Teenage Vampire. Why they needed a devil guy in I Was a Teenage Vampire, no one knows. But this was made to help pitch that movie. Movie never happened, and there's that unique copy of it on the left with the long horns is over at Bob's place, and the copy that's in Star Wars is also at Bob's, but it is a separate mask. And there's Rick working, very young Rick, adding hair to that Wolfman. This is early 70s. And then on the right is someone wearing the devil guy mask with some cool hands at Bob Burns' Halloween show called The Thing in the Attic from 1974. And they also featured some other Cantina aliens in that show, namely the Bat Demon guy, which is a modified version of the brown Wolfman, but Rick totally changed the face of it. It's more of a bat than it is a wolf, and it's got the red glowing eyes. And if you see there, that's Kathy Burns or Rick's wife at the time. They traded off depending on the show, levitating over the bed. It was a high production value show that was done in Bob's backyard. Thousands of people from the neighborhood used to come to Bob's famous Halloween shows. And he had people like John Berg, Rick Baker, Rob Bottin, all of these amazing, Dennis Buren, amazing famous FX artists that were just kids and young guys learning. He was this sort of launching point for so many amazing careers in effects, and it's just super cool. There's one of my favorites, the Gotal.
Yeah, we know, again, this is one of these things where multiple names come out of the woodwork. Yeah, so Ron Cobb drew this guy, and among his annotations, described his biology, suggesting that this character comes from the high tundra. So in the Lucasfilm original documentation from 1977, this character was known as High Tundra. And then, of course, later on, he became a Gotal, and we affectionately just know them as goats.
Yeah. And this goat, so this shows so there's that beautiful sketch. I'm going to make that one. I don't want to do that version.
That outfit is great, yeah.
So there he is. There's actually, we're even missing one. I think it's in the next slide. There's 3 different outfits he wears in the cantina alone. And then the one on the right is from the holiday special, where they changed his paint a bit. But we've got, okay, so I always like to figure out, how do they pull these things together? So you have Terminal Man there who's wearing a particular canvas robe. You take that, you subtract the Jawa hood, you add the outer robe from Yam Nose, and the head from the goat, and the hands from the It's Alive baby from the movie It's Alive, of course, and you get this other goat. And that's what they would do. They would, to make it seem like a bigger scene, they would take the same head, mix and match different outfits, and swap things around. Here's the third version of him from Star Wars. He's sort of, we call him the bureaucrat goat, because he's got a little of that look.
It looks like he has a day job.
Yeah, although it's Casual Friday because he's wearing jeans. Yeah. And you've got Mickey Herman in the background. We actually don't know who the dresser is in the front. She turns up in tons of photos. If anybody ever knows anyone that worked on the set, please let us know. We're trying to find that woman on the left. And in the background on the right, you see George Lucas himself. And Terminal Man just really just despondent and just.
It is interesting though,
Why?
we discovered that a lot of these aliens that have since been attributed to being male in the expanded universe and whatnot were played by female performers,
Yeah.
often staff members at Industrial Light and Magic.
Yeah, or like Jim Nelson's kid,
Yeah.
Kimberly, and yeah, and it's funny. This is another thing where we do the smoking shoes. You know, we look through and we're like, okay, who's got those shoes on, and then like who's wearing the same sandals as Terminal Man, and you start to figure out who played who. In the foreground there is the Given, the back of him. He's got a shawl on because that hides the seam on the back of his head. That's why a lot of aliens wear scarves in movies and have high collars. And of course the canoodling pair on the left there. I always love that he's got like some kind of hardware, like he's repelling after. It's like, I'm out, go gone, and he just like looks up. Like, up.
There's Yamdos, which is one of the best character names I thought. The expanded universe has since named her Hanemfi alien named Mayuma Onif.
Yeah, there you
But in my mind, she's always Yamdos.
So if you look on the right, they had cast up one of these It's Alive baby heads during the production, because that's it. Just cast that Duros. This is a fresh out of the mold. You see the flashing on the edges. That's where the seam is. And the reason they did that was Phil was going to fabricate this alien over it, and it turns out that was Yamnos. So talking to them, you know, we're able to find out things like, well, what's under there? And that's Maria at our shop fixing up the original mask. You can see how painstakingly we go in and recreate the little textures. And when we do stuff like this, we eventually repaint, but we only paint the stuff we've added, which is the hardest possible way to get a match, but it's the only way that leaves it as original as possible. We don't want to cover up any of that beautiful screen-used skin.
And I should note that attention to detail, the idea of preserving it as it appeared in the original film, is only a concept that has recently been developed, because many of these cantina